I'm Sophie Gibson Rush, and this is Strong Sound. Today, let's start by talking about me. I spent the weekend writing and recording some new songs with my sweetheart and musical accomplice, Jordan. I was trying to write a bridge, and I knew that I wanted it to be an ascending scale with a big harmonic build, a driving rhythm that made it sound very, very important. So it builds and it builds and it builds to the verse, which, as I kept saying, would be an emotionally anticlimactic song idea. So trying to create the musical equivalent of blue balls, essentially. It's genius. And it didn't work. I couldn't pull it off because I'm not really a good enough player or composer. This feeling will not be foreign to any artist in any discipline. It's the unbearable frustration of knowing what you want and not being able to actualize it because your technique isn't quite up to snuff. I'm going to steal a concept from Ira Glass here and talk about the taste gap. Here's how Ira describes it. He says, and I'm not going to do the voice, "Nobody tells this to people who are beginners. I wish someone told me. All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. But there is this gap. For the first couple of years, you make stuff, and it's not that good. It's just trying to be good. It has potential, but it's not good. But your taste, the thing that has got you into the game, is still killer, and your taste is why your work disappoints you." This is the taste gap, and it's a really dangerous place to find yourself. Ira says that most people quit in this phase because it really is the most depressing thing. To know what's good, and to know that you aren't that. Every single creative person goes through this at some point. Ask anyone, classical composers, muralists, hip-hop producers, and film directors. They all went through a dark time where they were completely aware of how much they sucked. But how do you get out when you're drowning in the moat while looking at the castle? You make bad work. You work out all of your bad work. You work and you work and you work until you work your way into your taste. They match up. It's all you can do. Remember Malcolm Gladwell's idea that anyone who puts in 10,000 hours of deliberate practice will become a master at something? I'm going to oversimplify and misrepresent it with the rest of them, but now is the time to put in your 10,000 hours. As Ira says, it's only by going through a volume of work that you will close that gap, and your work will be as good as your ambitions. I'm not sure if this next thing undermines my point or strengthens it, but the Tucson Symphony will be performing Mozart's 25th Symphony this weekend, which is a symphony that he wrote when he was 17. This means that by the time he was 17, Mozart had already written 24 symphonies. He started when he was 5. Most of those 24 symphonies you would never recognize. They're very subdued and courtly. But the 25th you know. Many of the first 24 symphonies sound like someone else. Mozart was copying his predecessors and his idols while gradually finding his musical identity. At 17, he wrote this, which is both patently Mozart and dripping with teenage passion. It opens with a furious diminished seventh chord, and then the drama unfolds. This symphony has all the character and melodrama of opera. It's also the first music you hear in the film Amadeus. The Tucson Symphony is calling this program Youthful Exuberance, which sounds a little like how your spinster aunt would describe the tingly feeling she had when she first wore a swim costume to the beach. This music is anything but that, though. Besides Mozart's stormy masterwork, there's Dvorak Serenade for strings, a piece so beautiful it will make you want to strangle something. Similar to Mozart, this was written at a time in Dvorak's life when he broke through the dreaded taste gap. Like Mozart, Dvorak had been stylistically stuck in the shadow of his predecessors. With this piece, you can begin to hear him breaking out on his own. He's just there, on the threshold. It's a half hour of shifting sounds and textures, never remaining in one place for too long. It's freaking gorgeous. This program will be great medicine for anyone stuck in the taste gap, I promise. It's also an opportunity to see the TSO's new music director in action. Jose Luis Gomez is a Venezuelan-born Spanish conductor with a career that crisscrosses the globe like the map interludes in Indiana Jones. He's young, he's current, and it seems like our local orchestra is pretty excited to be working with him. Check out his running start Friday, March 3rd at St. Andrew's Presbyterian and Saturday and Sunday at Catalina Fotels High School. And quickly, before we wrap up, I want to highlight a Tucsonan I truly admire, someone who I think has decidedly made it to the other side of the taste gap, or taste canyon as it sometimes feels. In September, I went to go see Joe Forkin's exhibition, The Lebowski Cycle, at the University of Arizona Art Museum. It's a collection of oil paintings in the style of old masters, but the paintings depict frames from The Big Lebowski. This mixture of old techniques, new subjects, and humor totally inspired me, and I've thought a lot about it since. So imagine my surprise when the Joe Forkin, who's releasing his alt-country album, Alpha Mule, at Congress this Saturday, turns out to be the same Joe Forkin who painted the Lebowski Cycle. Joe Forkin was born in New York, grew up in Tucson, and now lives and works in Santa Ana, California. He's a world-renowned visual artist, but he's written and played music his whole life. Now he's releasing a pretty great album, recorded here in Tucson at Wave Lab with Eric Stoner, Joey Burns, Fen Eichner, Craig Schumacher, Connor Gallagher, Jacob Valenzuela, and Steph Keppen. You can do whatever you want to do, guys. You can be a painter and a musician, as long as you put in the time. Hang in there, keep practicing, and as always, go to shows, support local musicians, and get inspired. Here's some Ira Glass for encouragement. I'll see you next week.
Nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish somebody had told this to me, is that all of us who do creative work, like, we get into it, and we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap, that for the first couple of years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good, okay? It's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer. And your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. You know what I mean? A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would just say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste. They could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. They knew it felt short. It didn't have this special thing that we wanted it to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you could do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week or every month you know you're going to finish one story. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions. In my case, I took longer to figure out how to do this than anybody I've ever met. It takes a while. It's going to take you a while. It's normal to take a while, and you just have to fight your way through that, okay?